You know, if the Wright brothers hadn't made the first flight, where would we be? We've only been flying 100 years, and you have to have people that have gone before you and done things to aspire to.
The learning from the past is incredibly important. It drives our future.
The mission of the National Aviation Hall of Fame is to remember our history, but it's also to inspire the next generation.
Is that I cannot remember a time that I was not totally fascinated with aviation. And I considered that one of the greatest honors of my life, to have my name in the Aviation Hall of Fame.
We must honor our heroes so we can learn from them, so we can thrive from them, and we can grow from them.
It will inspire younger people, but it also will inspire older people as well.
T-minus 10, 9, 8. We have a go for main engine start. We have main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Today's about educating the next generation of pilots.
Everything about this is just so advanced.
There's a job and there's a career, and Cirrus gave me a career.
Cirrus planes, you get a little puffed up with pride that you know, yeah, I helped build that.
Welcome to the Cirrus Aircraft SR Series Emergency and Abnormal course. Whoa, 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 whoa. You okay?
We're going to Oshkosh, baby!
After you land, IQ automatically begins sending updates to the Cirrus cloud. Welcome to the Cirrus Aircraft Cross-Country Procedures course. This course was built to help you learn and be comfortable with the getting there part of the Cirrus life.
Innovation is in Cirrus's DNA.
What we do is create a lifestyle for our customer.
We've got 9,000 airplanes out in the wild who are a testament to what we call the Cirrus life.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the returning enshrinees of the National Aviation Hall of Fame. Charlie Bolden, Eileen Collins, Bob Crippen, Joan Sullivan Garrett, Paul Kaminsky, Dale Clapmeyer, Clay Lacey, Russell Meyer, and Sean Doherty Tucker. Let's give them another round of applause.
Well, good evening. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 59th Aviation Hall of Fame Enshrinement Celebration. My name is Dale Clapmeyer. and I'm a 2014 enshrinee of the National Aviation Hall of Fame. Believe me, it never gets old. Thank you. It never gets old being able to stand up here with this elite group of American aerospace historians, history heroes, champions, pioneers. My brother Alan and I started Cirrus Aircraft with little more than a big dream and ambition. From our humble beginnings in Wisconsin in our family barn, we dreamed of changing general aviation through building airplanes based on innovation, safety, comfort, ease of operation. We delivered our first airplane, our first certified airplane, in the summer of 1999. Today we have over 9,000 piston engine SR airplanes in use all around the world. And in addition to that, 500 Collier award-winning single-engine personal jets, the SF-50 Vision Jet. I'm very excited to be here representing Cirrus Aircraft as the presenting sponsor of the 59th National Aviation Hall of Fame Enshrinement Dinner. As presenting sponsor, Cirrus honors all of the enshrinees, both past and those that will be enshrined this evening. We also honor each and every single one of you that is here tonight. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. It is these inductees and all of you that help inspire the next generation of aerospace pioneers. These pioneers will grow this industry and ensure a bright and prosperous future in all forms of aviation. At this time, I ask you all please rise for the presentation of colors by the Armed Forces Color Guard. Please then remain standing for the national anthem performed by the President's own United States Marine Band soloist, Master Gunnery Sergeant Kevin Benner.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
It's okay. You can sit down.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome 2008 National Aviation Hall of Fame enshrinee Sean Tucker to deliver tonight's invocation.
Yeah, baby. You know, I'm just so moved in this place, in this country, with these people, and for me, it's really an honor to be here. And when they asked me to give the prayer, I said absolutely, because number one, there's no atheist in a disabled airplane, okay? And we certainly are not in a disabled country, and I don't consider this as disabled world. I mean, what we're doing here tonight is sharing our passion, our hope, our love for this country. So I'm honored to be here. So please bow your heads and let's pray, okay, for this magnificent country. So Lord God, thank you for this magnificent journey you've allowed us to travel. And thank you for all our dear friends, our colleagues, our wives, our husbands, our mentors, our sons, our daughters, our nieces, nephews, and grandchildren. Please give us the strength to continue to live with reverence, passion, joy, and humility. Please empower us to continue this journey by opening the door to the future for our next generations who are going to make this world an even better place. God bless America, and amen. Thanks, you guys.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the chair of the board of the National Aviation Hall of Fame, Jim Cooling.
Wow, what a great start. And Sean, thank you for your inspirational invocation and the Dale Clapmeyer's comments and our American military. It just makes us really pleased to be here. And it's my job on behalf of the National Aviation Hall of Fame Board of Trustees to not only welcome you to this ceremony and thank you for really the impressive gathering of enshrinees who were up here. I'd just like to have one more hand for them. I think they're... And we have future enshrinees here in the audience. So the mission of the National Aviation Hall of Fame is to honor aerospace legends, to inspire future leaders by recognizing the tenacity, persistence, skill, and courage of the men and women of the air and space industry. We are honored that you are here with us in our nation's capital to celebrate 6 individuals who will be enshrined tonight in this beautiful venue, this historic venue. These men and women have shaped the landscape of aviation and aerospace. You see them behind me. At this time, I'd like to just recognize a few dignitaries and industry leaders. We don't have time for everybody. And if you just hold your applause until I have a chance to introduce them. First of all, the Honorable Mike Turner from Dayton, Ohio. Is Mike here? Can you stand? Okay. Mike is from the city where we are in the Dayton Hall. The Aviation Hall of Fame is in Dayton, the birthplace of aviation. We also have the Assistant Secretary of the Navy, the Honorable Russell Rumbaugh. Do we see Russell? I don't know where Russell is. And we have the Chief of the U.S. National Guard Bureau, General Daniel Hokanson. I think General Hokanson, if you'd kind of let us know where you are. We have Pamela Melroy, the Administrator and Deputy Administrator of NASA. We have Dr. Maria Zuber, Co-Chair of the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology. We have General Lloyd Fig Newton, retired Air Force General, the first African-American pilot in the Thunderbirds, and he'll be a presenter tonight, so you get a chance to see him. I believe that Michael Whitaker is here with us, the presidential nominee for the office of FAA Administrator. Michael, can you, there's Michael standing up. So, and then last night we had a reception where we did some awards, and I want to thank Pete Bunce, CEO of Gamma, and Ed Bolin, the CEO of NBA, who are long-time supporters of the National Aviation Hall of Fame. And then one of my favorites is Amanda Wright Lane, who is out there somewhere. Amanda, if you stand up. Amanda is the grandniece of Orville and Wilbur Wright, and when you come to Dayton, you want to make sure she gives you a tour of the Wright brothers' home. There's nothing like it, where she and her brother, Stephen, with a personal tour. And then finally, I'd like to recognize the men and women who serve as the trustees of the National Aviation Hall of Fame. Would ask you to stand, and along with our new CEO and president, Amy Mariyama. I know there's a lot of trustees out there. Thank you for everything you do. And Amy, thank you. This is your first year doing this, and you're doing fabulous. Yeah. We also want to thank our many sponsors, and you know who you are out there. There's too many of them to name, but you're, it's a special thank you to the presenting sponsor, to Cirrus, and you just heard Dale Klappmeyer speak. You also need to know that Pat Waddick is an officer and trustee of the Hall of Fame, and we're delighted to have him. So we're grateful not only for the support at this event, but also our Heritage Hall and Education Center in Dayton, Ohio, and through your support of our education program, which is called Flight with the National Aviation Hall of Fame. Last evening, our president's reception was sponsored by Whalen Aerospace Technologies and Williams International. So thank you to all of them and to all of our partners who are with us tonight. And if you'll look at the beautiful printed program at each of your tables, there's a list of all those sponsors. Please look at it and please thank them, okay? We pay homage tonight to America's aviation and space heroes and seek to encourage others to follow in their footsteps with our education programs. Our education programs target young students in partnership with PBS, who's also here, I know PBS is here, and others to stimulate interest in the exciting and important opportunities in aviation. These programs also provide helpful insights to teachers whose mentorship can inspire young people to pursue their dreams. And we heard from one of those teachers last night who was terrific, and you'll hear more about her in a minute. What we do is we seek to ensure aviation's future workforce. Now, you will hear more about this education program, which is near and dear to Amy's heart when she gives her presentation just shortly. And I know that in a few minutes we're going to begin the enshrinement ceremony, but you have to know that we want to introduce to you a few unique individuals who are shaping the face of aviation as we speak. These men and women were recognized last evening by the National Aviation Hall of Fame in a ceremony at our president's reception at the Reagan Center. And you'll see some photos, I think, above me here as we go through this. The first is Tyson Wise. Tyson is co-founder and past CEO of ForeFlight and was awarded the Neil Armstrong Outstanding Achievement Award, which was established to recognize lifelong dedication to leadership in promoting aviation and the values of citizenship, dignity, integrity, and service. Tyson and his associates at ForeFlight have created technologies and products that are used by pilots, and I think every pilot in this room probably uses ForeFlight, all over the world that improve safety and efficiency of flight in all segments of aviation community. And we're pleased that Mark Armstrong was also present last night and is present tonight. And whatever you do, you don't want to leave before you hear Mark Armstrong tonight do high flight. It's like one of the great things of our aviation community. The other awardees last night, Jet Propulsion Labs Ingenuity, the Mars helicopter team, which demonstrated powered control flight on another planet for the first time. It was like flying a helicopter on this planet at 100,000 feet. And they demonstrated in this extremely thin atmosphere of Mars that flight was possible. And they did it only a century after the Wright brothers did first control flight on this planet. Yeah? So the Mars demonstration team has shown us that their explorations can really benefit future exploration of not only Mars, but our other planets in our solar system. And they were presented the Milton Caniff Spirit of Flight Award for their exceptional contributions to the advancement of flight. And then finally, Megan Tucker. Megan is a STEAM educator who teaches children right down the road in Northern Virginia from kindergarten to fifth grade. She is not just teaching kids math, science, reading, and writing. She's teaching them to learn about what fascinates them and to explore their passions. From holding paper airplane contests to studying Newton's laws, she strives to bring real-world purpose to the education in her classroom. Megan was awarded the Scott Crossfield Aerospace Education Award, recognizing an aerospace education teacher for congressional accomplishments. And I guess I shouldn't have said finally, because I forgot that we also did the first Congressional Leadership Award last night. That's our inaugural leadership award presented to Senator Jerry Moran, ranking member of the Senate Aviation Committee, and Congressman Sam Graves, chairman of the House Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure. This award pays homage to exceptional American leaders who have whose dedicated public service has significantly propelled advancements in aviation and aerospace. Senator Moran could not be with us here tonight, and Chairman Graves was not able to be with us either. But would Tyson Weiss, Megan Tucker, and the Mars helicopter team, would you all stand where we could recognize you? We are grateful for the contributions made every day by individuals and organizations to advance the progress of the aviation industry. Tonight we have 6 new enshrinees who will be inducted into the National Aviation Hall of Fame and showcased in our Heritage Hall and Education Center in Dayton, Ohio, co-located with the Museum of the United States Air Force. They will take their place beside the currently enshrined 256 aviation heroes, and you met some of them here tonight. But being enshrined tonight are Velta Benn, Cornelius Coffey, Angela Gittens, Fred Haise, Ed Stimpson, and Kathryn Sullivan. We describe them as pioneers, visionaries, and leaders paving pathways previously undiscovered, not just for themselves, but to benefit their fellow men and women, to benefit science, to benefit flight. We record their histories, we tell their stories, and through their accomplishments, inspire the next generation of pioneers, visionaries, and leaders. This is why the National Aviation Hall of Fame exists. Thank you for your support of our mission. Please enjoy the evening.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage our Enshrinement Master of Ceremony, CNN Aviation Correspondent and Pilot, Pete Muntean.
Good evening. 254 people have been inducted into the National Aviation Hall of Fame, and tonight we make that number 260. My name is Pete Muntean. It's a huge honor to be back hosting this event for the second year in a row. This year, there are some incredible figures to share. Tonight, we're inducting 3 women into the National Aviation Hall of Fame. That is half of the enshrinee class of 2023. I'm a little bit biased here. This is especially important to me because my late mother, Nancy Lynn, was an aerobatic flight instructor and aerobatic performer. There she is up there. That photo's 20 years old, by the way. I haven't aged at all. I was lucky enough to travel with her as her announcer at air shows. It was a pretty unique childhood, to say the least. And when she signed autographs, she came up with a slogan. It was, "Inspiration is our mission," which is fitting because that's almost exactly the slogan of the National Aviation Hall of Fame, honoring aerospace legends to inspire future leaders. Maybe it's working because in the first 8 months of 2023, the FAA issued a whopping 87,000 new pilot certificates, up 23% from this time last year. There are also increases when it comes to women and people of color taking the controls for the first time. We all know that better representation makes aviation better as a whole, and new student pilot certificates last month alone, think about this, totaled more than 7,800, a 74% jump from 4 years ago before the pandemic. I did not expect FAA figures to get a round of applause tonight. I know it's pretty hard to get excited by numbers, but if this was a State of the Union speech, you could say the state of our union is strong. I'm letting the Power Center of Washington get to my head because we're not in Dayton this year. The point is, the surge in interest in aviation and aerospace would not be possible without the people we are honoring tonight. They have captained industry, they have blazed trails, and they have seized records. To put it another way, they built the runway. Their recognition tonight does not stop here. These 6 individuals will be forever immortalized as part of Heritage Hall and the Education Center at the National Museum of the United States Air Force in Dayton, Ohio, as well as the newly developed education program, Discovering Flight with the National Aviation Hall of Fame. You'll hear more about those programs later on in the night. Okay, how do you feel about getting started tonight? Woo! All right, our first inductee is a world leader in airport management. She set new policy for security, passenger safety, and hiring, all of which directly impact the travel of millions of people who pass through our airports each day. She was the CEO of Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport in the 90s, which saw a huge influx of visitors, maybe the greatest to any airport ever, thanks to the 1996 Summer Olympics. Ladies and gentlemen, please turn your attention to the screen.
Born in New York City in 1947, Angela Gittens' impressive career within the world of aviation did not begin as one would expect. Graduating from Fairleigh Dickinson University in New Jersey in 1967 with a major in sociology and minor in English, Gittens had different aspirations of becoming a prison warden. However, after college, Gittens began work as a junior health program analyst, specializing in budgeting for the medical industry in New York. Her skill set caught the eye of Lou Turpin, director of San Francisco International Airport, and eventual personal mentor, who in 1983 recruited Gittens. For the next 10 years, Gittens would act as deputy and director for the business and finance departments of the San Francisco International Airport, where her career in aviation began. After being offered the position in 1993, Gittens became the CEO of Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. At the time of her hiring, the airport was in chaos, full of scandals and corruption within the organization. This led to many issues that heavily damaged the airport's image and Atlanta as a whole. The freshly hired Gittens was immediately tasked with rebuilding the public image and management of the busiest airport in the world. All this with the added pressure of one of the largest events on Earth a mere 2 years away. Atlanta was set to host the 1996 Summer Olympics. With over 2 million expected air travelers into Atlanta for the Games, and an airport in no condition to operate itself, let alone handle Olympic travelers, Angela Gittens was placed at the forefront of what many employees and managers who previously quit considered an impossible situation. Gittens was unraveled. She stood her ground with the motto, "What does it take to fix this?" Through her immense drive for greatness and leadership capabilities, Gittens was instrumental in rebuilding the infrastructure of Atlanta's airport, from its concession and business contracts to airline gate deals and international travel facilitation. In this significant transitional period in the 1990s for Atlanta's airport, Gittens created an atmosphere of getting things done, as well as being the fearless leader who built a culture of, for any one of us to succeed, we all need to succeed. In 2001, Gittens would transfer from Atlanta to Florida, acting as CEO of the Miami International Airport, facing a new set of obstacles and complications from the lasting effects of 9/11. From 2008 to 2020, Gittens served as Director General of Airports Council International World, where she worked to unite airports and develop partnerships to improve the air travel experience further. Gittens oversaw the modernization of global air travel into the 21st century, helping create new policies on security, passenger safety, hiring standards, and improving overall air travel. Regarded as one of the world's leaders in airport management, Gittens has lent her expertise and insight to many other projects in aviation, including the FAA Management Advisory Committee, FAA Research, Engineering, and Development Committee, and the JetBlue Airways Board of Directors. Tonight, we welcome a true leader in aviation, Angela Gittens, to the National Aviation Hall of Fame.
Please welcome the nephew of Angela Gittens, Derek Farrell.
Good evening. I am Derek Farrell, and my great aunt is Angela Gittens. Thanks to her for helping me realize that the best careers in the world are right here in aviation. At a very young age, I had an interest in planes. That all went from 1 to 100 one Christmas morning in 2009. That's when my aunt gave me my first plane model, a Dayron South African Airways Airbus A380 airport playset. By the end of that day, I'd asked her more than an earful of questions about these mighty machines and went to bed thinking about how badly I wanted a future in the aviation industry. Jumping to November 28th, 2017, I was enjoying my final day in New York when my aunt called my grandmother and asked us if we were interested in taking an airside tour of New York's JFK. Without hesitation, I said yes. She and Bradley Rubenstein taught me a lot that day about their line of work and how airports function. But the most memorable thing about that day was the voice in my head telling me, you need to be a pilot. My family and I see her as a hard-working, caring person who throughout all points of the day you can count on. To me, I see her as a mentor. I'm her rooster and she's my maverick. Auntie Angela, thank you and congratulations.
Tonight, we welcome airport business leader and FAA advocate, Angela Gittens, into the National Aviation Hall of Fame.
Thank you so much. That's quite something, I have to say. And I thank you, National Aviation Hall of Fame, for this honor. I feel very blessed that I was able to spend a career in this dynamic, ever-changing industry that has so much opportunity for people from just about every discipline and field of interest. And I'm humbled to be included with the exceptional individuals being inducted tonight. I'm also grateful that the airport segment of the aviation industry has achieved recognition. Airports have tended to be overlooked, perhaps because they literally sit on the ground, serving an industry that is associated with the sky. Historically, many of us in the airport segment of aviation hadn't even realized there was a career before they wound up at an airport. That's what happened to me. And I dedicate this induction to my mentor, the late Louis Turpin, who gave me my first airport job, as you heard, at San Francisco International Airport, and who pushed me to take my first airport directorship, Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta Airport. It was actually at my job interview with Lou Turpin that I started to realize how much there is to the field of aviation, part of which occurs at the airport. What it takes to make this the safest form of transportation. The interrelationships among government at federal, state, and local levels, commercial companies, academia, the military, and the brave pioneers who take to the sky and beyond. To learn and contribute as much as I could, I served on FAA committees, the National Research Council's workshop to develop long-term global aeronautics scenarios, the National Academy of Sciences Transportation Research Board Executive Committee, the JetBlue Board of Directors, and the National Civil Aviation Review Commission, the Moneta Commission. And I enrolled in Harvard's Kennedy School Program for Senior Managers in Government. These were all stimulating experiences that helped me help my industry. And in my retirement from the International Airport Organization, ACI World, I am pleased to serve as chair of the Schiphol USA board that oversees the JFK International Air Terminal T4. The executives and members of the board are here as gold sponsors, and I thank you for that. And I thank you to family and friends who have taken the time to cheer me on with this fabulous honor, and to my parents that instilled in me a hunger for continuous learning, a desire to do my best, and an insistence on integrity. And by the way, they are 105 and 106. And they celebrated their 81st wedding anniversary in June. Thank you so much.
Our next inductee was a true trailblazer, and we have a bit of a personal connection, which I'll get to in a second. She was an aviation pioneer who began as a Women's Air Force Service pilot, or WASP, and then went on to become the first woman to qualify to make takeoffs and landings in a jet aboard an aircraft carrier. She ultimately flew for more than 63 years, amassing, get this, 55,000 flying hours as a certificated flying instructor, FAA examiner, and safety expert. The guy who did my check ride for private and multi-engine did his check rides with her, so I hope in some way maybe she taught him something that he taught me. Please direct your attention to the screen.
Velta Benn was born in Vienna, Virginia in 1917, growing up with a love of aviation. During that time, though, few aviation opportunities existed for women. The needs of our country during wartime, though, gave Benn her chance. During World War II, the U.S. Army Air Corps designed a new training program to teach women to fly U.S. planes for ferrying, testing, and other stateside needs. Benn was one of the 25,000 women who applied to the Women Air Force Service Pilots, known as the WASP. She was accepted into WASP Class 44-7, earning her wings in September 1944. During her 7 months of training, Benn flew many different types of aircraft, including the BT-13 and the PT-17 Stearman. After graduation, Benn was stationed at Merced Army Airfield in California. While there, she served as an administrative pilot, transporting military personnel, and as an instrument instructor pilot for the male Army Air Force pilots. Benn served her country during wartime until the WASP were disbanded on December 20th, 1944. After her WASP experience, Benn did not stop there. She continued her involvement in aviation, building on her widely known reputation for safety in the air and on the ground. Benn helped produce aviation training films. She researched safety and landing procedures for the Navy, becoming the first woman qualified for aircraft carrier takeoffs and landings. She worked for the FAA as an accident prevention counselor and became an examiner for private, commercial, multi-engine, and instrument ratings. Along with these jobs, Benn also competed in several powder puff derby races. She was also the first woman to instruct for the AOPA Safety Clinic. The WASP finally received official recognition in 1977 for their service 30 years after World War II, obtaining veteran status. In March 2010, Benn and her fellow WASP received the Congressional Gold Medal, the highest civilian honor in the United States. Benn was active in the Virginia aviation community for over 40 years, being inducted into the Virginia Aviation Hall of Fame in 1984. During her many decades in aviation, Benn accumulated over 40,000 hours in the air, earning a wide range of flying type ratings and instructing an untold number of aviators. In 2010, Velta Benn passed away at the age of 93, leaving behind an aviation legacy that is still felt to this day. Please welcome pilot, instructor, and veteran Velta Benn into the National Aviation Hall of Fame.
Please welcome Terry Benn Gentry, daughter of the late Velta Benn.
Good evening. I would like to thank Leslie Gibson, who along with our late brother Del Haney, who worked tirelessly to ensure that Velta take her place among the pioneering giants of aviation. In addition, I'd like to thank the National Aviation Hall of Fame Selection Committee for recognizing the remarkable achievements of our mother. I'd like to share a few stories that exemplify Velta's humor, expertise, and love of flying. One evening in the 1960s, we were in a Piper Apache flying home into National Airport. The controller kept vectoring Mother around, calling her Sir all the while. Finally, as he was getting ready to hand her off to ground control, she said, "Do you mind if I ask you a question?" "Go ahead, sir," came the reply. "Do I sound like a man to you?" There was a pause. "Well, no, but you were doing such a great job, I was sure you had to be a man." Guess who was waiting for us when we got out of the plane? In the early 1980s, my husband John, who was a tanker pilot, was stationed at Beale Air Force Base, where they refueled the SR-71. Exactly. Mother was very excited to come for a visit and get a close-up look of the super-secret aircraft. While she was there, she was invited to speak at the Gold Rush chapter of the Dedalians. She totally captivated the audience filled with KC-135, U-2, and SR-71s, as well as several Army Air Corps retirees. The members of the greatest generation remembered the WASP and were very excited to meet Mother. The respect shown by some of the most elite pilots in the world was exhibited when she received a standing ovation. And then when John was ready to trade his Air Force wings in for those of an airline pilot, he of course asked Velta to give him his ATP check ride. After flying a Piper Aztec, she told him to go pre-flight a Cessna 150. He asked her if he really needed the single engine as well as the multi-engine rating, and she said, "I don't know, but you're gonna get it." Personally, I think she was just having fun flying with him. John has always insisted that it wasn't a mother-in-law check. She put him through his paces. It was quintessential Velta. She didn't care who you were. She was going to be tough, but always fair. So on behalf of my sisters, Lynn, Laura, Bonnie, and Dawn, it is our great honor and privilege to present our extraordinary mother, Velta Benn, for enshrinement into the National Aviation Hall of Fame.
Tonight, we welcome trailblazer and pilot Velta Benn into the National Aviation Hall of Fame. Accepting on behalf of Miss Velta Benn tonight is her daughter, Laura Benn.
Good evening. Mother would have been tickled pink to have been here tonight, expressing her joy in accepting this honor. Thank you to everyone in the Hall of Fame, and a very special thanks again to our brother Dell and to Leslie Gibson, who nominated her. I'll do my best to share with you the essence of who she was. Mother was determined to serve her country during World War II by joining the WASP. She met the flying requirements, but was just under the height requirement. She prepared for the physical by hanging by her knees from a tree limb, and her perseverance paid off. Mother was proud to have been a WASP, never complaining about the circumstances they were disbanded under. Her principles to live by were whatever you do your best, never give up, and always be a lady. That was how she lived, as a woman of faith, thankful for what she had, and ready to work for her goals in life. When the WASP were disbanded, she had to find her own way home from Merced in California. She had a friend with a small plane, and he asked Mother to fly it back to Virginia for him. She took an old atlas, drew a straight line from where she was to Virginia, and that's the route she flew. At times, she had to circle and circle the small plane to gain enough altitude to get over the mountains. At night, she slept on the ground under the wing. When she needed to fuel the plane, she landed on a road, taxied up to a gas station, and tanked up. Later, she would say that she didn't have many brains, but she did have spunk. She never stopped learning and advancing in her flying career. When you do the math, that 55,000 hours that was mentioned earlier is equivalent to nearly 19 years of her life if she had flown 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. Over the years, while earning advanced ratings, she had 5 little mouths to feed. So with her sister helping with the daily routine at home, Mother was able to work various jobs, doing everything from shampoo girl to bookkeeping to, if you can believe it, selling silverware and china door to door. And she was really good at it. Moving on to full-time work as an FAA examiner, she saw check rides as an opportunity to teach, which was her very favorite thing to do. She had her sister at home who was helping out with the daily routine with we 5 kids. When she was in full-time work in aviation as an examiner, one of her students was pilot Matthew Tyson. And he took 7 of his check rides with Mother. On the 7th one, she was nearly 92 years of age. He recalls when he himself was under pressure, we'll put it that way, under pressure in the cockpit, always thinking, what would Velta do? Remain calm, cool, and collected, of course. It isn't surprising that she had a sense of adventure and was a woman of firsts. Her own mother was the first woman to earn a driver's license in the state of Nebraska. Her father, among other things, worked for Buffalo Bill Cody's Wild West show, training and breaking wild broncs. In 1967, she had written a script for a Navy training film for the T-2B jet aircraft, and that led to her being the first woman to take off and land a fixed-wing aircraft on an aircraft carrier. The carrier commander was not happy, having said that no woman was going to set foot on his deck. Fast forward nearly 40 years later, in 2006, she would be honored for that first in an evening of aviation firsts, along with 6 well-known astronauts and record-setting male pilots, including Colonel Buzz Aldrin. The gala was held just down the road at the National Air and Space Museum. It was typical of Mother that we seldom heard about any of these accomplishments until later when someone else would mention them to us. Even though she was proud of that honor, what she was most excited about was meeting and chatting with Buzz Aldrin, Moonwalker. Mother delighted in her children and her grandchildren. Our milestones in life were more important to her than her own. Along with all she accomplished in aviation, she was our family rock, seeing to it that we were in Christian schools, never missing our important events. A family member said of Mother, God saw fit to make Velta small in size, but when it came to brains, wit, and wisdom, she had it all. And it seems fitting in closing my remarks this evening to tell you that the night before Mother passed away at nearly 94 years of age, as a close family friend was telling her goodnight, her last words to him were, "I'll meet you at the plane." Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the stage our Master of Ceremonies, Pete Muntean.
Hello, I hope everyone enjoyed their dinner, and please continue with your dessert. Before we continue with our enshrinement program, we would like to change it up a bit and recognize our military service members, current and prior, who are with us tonight. Another big stat, 70% of enshrinees in the Hall of Fame boast a career that included military service, whether in peacetime or wartime. So, when you hear your service song, please feel free to stand, sing along, and show your spirit. Here we go. Army. Woo! The United States Marine Corps. the United States Navy. Space Force. Now it's Space Force. That was the Air Force. Sorry about that. And the United States Coast Guard. Okay, bet you didn't expect a musical interlude to interrupt your dessert. I would now like to introduce you to the leader of the Hall of Fame. She has really worked wonders in this brief time she has stepped into this role. Please welcome President and CEO of the National Aviation Hall of Fame, Amy Mariyama.
Good evening. Thank you all for being here with us tonight. Just waiting. Sorry, my remarks aren't here. It's hard to describe how wonderful it is to be here with all of you as we celebrate the individuals who have left an indelible mark on our industry. Our inductees tonight bring the total number of those enshrined into the National Aviation Hall of Fame to a stunning 260. Each of them stands as an example of ingenuity, bravery, determination, and grit. And it is our mission to celebrate them, to honor them, and to share their stories so that the next generation will know of them and be inspired by them. And I want to share with you tonight just a little bit of the work that we're doing to ensure that their legacies endure. In 2022, we launched our education program, Discovering Flight, with the National Aviation Hall of Fame. With our partners at PBS, we introduced an aviation STEAM curriculum for grades pre-K through 6 that aligns with national standards, and with support from the Ohio Department of Education, Cirrus Aircraft, Gulfstream, Embraer, and others, we will reach over 200,000 students by the end of the year. At home, we've installed a new immersive theater where visitors can experience the thrill of aviation and learn about our enshrinees. And we've also expanded field trip experiences. And in 2024, we will launch the new Discovering Flight Innovation Lab, an exciting, forward-looking initiative aimed at fostering creativity, learning, and hands-on exploration in the fields of aviation and aerospace. This space will serve as a dynamic hub for students, visitors, and enthusiasts eager to delve into the world of aviation. And there is much more to come. With your generous support, the National Aviation Hall of Fame's Discovering Flight program is inspiring the next generation, igniting the passions of future aviation and aerospace trailblazers. And you can be part of the legacy. On your tables, you'll find envelopes, and I'm asking you to use them tonight to invest in our work to inspire the aviation workforce of tomorrow. Our team will be on hand to collect those from you after the program. And with that, I thank you for being here with us.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Now on to our next presentation. His career began as a naval aviator in the United States Marine Corps, and later as lunar module pilot on the famed Apollo 13 mission, which many of us have seen immortalized on the big screen, please direct your attention to our big screen now.
A native of Biloxi, Mississippi, Fred Haise was born on November 14, 1933. After high school, Haise attended Perkinston Junior College with the intention of becoming a journalist. Although he had never flown, Haise decided to serve during the Korean War by joining the Naval Aviation Cadet Program in 1952. After finishing his training in 1954, Haise served as a Marine Corps fighter pilot with VMF 533 and 114, flying F-2H-4 Banshees and F-9F-8 Cougars. Afterward, he served 2 years as an all-weather tactical instructor in Texas. In 1957, after his time in the Marines, Haise flew the F-86D with the Oklahoma Air National Guard while attending the University of Oklahoma for Aeronautical Engineering, graduating in 1959. Haise then joined the newly formed NASA, flying research flights for Lewis Research Center near Cleveland. When his Ohio Air National Guard unit was called up for the Berlin crisis of 1961, Haise served 10 months with the U.S. Air Force. In 1963, he transferred to the NASA Flight Research Center at Edwards Air Force Base, serving as a test pilot. In 1966, Fred Haise was selected by NASA into Astronaut Group 5 for the Manned Spaceflight Program. His first crew assignments were as backup lunar module pilot for both Apollo 8 and 11. Finally, Fred Haise got his chance for spaceflight, being assigned as lunar module pilot for Apollo 13.
We have commit and we have liftoff at 2:13. The Saturn V building up to 7.6 million pounds of thrust, and it has cleared the tower.
Flying with Jack Swigert and Flight Commander Jim Lovell, Apollo 13's mission was to be the third mission to land on the moon. However, a landing for Haise was not meant to be.
Houston, we've had Apollo.
En route to the moon, an oxygen tank exploded, crippling the service module and ending the possibility of an Apollo 13 lunar landing. Only through the dedication and ingenuity of both mission control and the crew were all 3 astronauts returned to the Earth safely. Thus far, Haise and his shipmates hold the record for the farthest distance humans have traveled from Earth. After the cancellation of the Apollo program, Fred Haise was given another challenge at NASA.
Houston is go for SEP. Have a great flight.
The Space Shuttle.
Take one, SEP.
In 1977, Haise was an integral part of the Orbiter Project Office and the program's approach and landing tests, verifying the new NASA spacecraft Enterprise. Haise was subsequently assigned to a shuttle flight mission to save the aging Skylab, carrying aloft a module to boost the station to a higher orbit. When the shuttle program schedule fell behind and couldn't help Skylab in time, Haise moved on to a 17-year aerospace executive career with Northrop Grumman. Among his many honors, Haise has received an honorary Doctor of Science degree from Western Michigan University, Presidential Medal of Freedom, Society of Experimental Pilots Kinchlow Award, and the NASA Distinguished Service Medal. Over the years, Fred Haise has accumulated over 9,300 hours of flight time, including 6,200 in jet aircraft. Tonight, we welcome pilot and astronaut Fred Haise to the National Aviation Hall of Fame.
Please welcome author and biographer, Bill Moore.
Good evening. I'm both thrilled and humbled to introduce for induction today Fred Haise. I was privileged to help Fred write his autobiography. It's the story of a regular guy born into an everyday American family during the Great Depression, traveling to different ports when his father was in the Navy in World War II, serving his country, falling in love with flying, and going to the moon. You know, just a regular guy. Wow. You know, he truly lived the great history of the 20th century. Fred and I attended the University of Oklahoma together, not together, a few years apart, but it has been a common thread for us. And throughout the 30 years or so that We've known each other. We talk a lot about, especially OU football. He was there when Bud Wilkinson was the coach, and I was there when Barry Switzer was hanging half 100 on teams. But recently we were at a book signing, and the OU women's softball team had just won the national championship. And they presented Fred with a signed softball by Coach Patty Gasso, and I must say I was quite jealous. But it's more than sports. The engineering degree that Fred achieved while he was at OU was part of a step-ladder process that took him to the moon on Apollo 13. When the explosion occurred on that fateful mission, Fred was less than 3 days away from setting his own boot prints on the moon. It was that close. He was denied once more when budget cuts killed the Apollo 19 moon landing, a mission he would have commanded, and yet he persevered. Fred doesn't let life get him down. He's an inspiration to millions around the world. He's one of the nicest people you will ever meet. He loves his dog, Tito. When he does a Zoom call with students, the kids all ask about Tito, and Fred will hold him up in front of the camera, and the students love it. And of course, Fred takes a back seat to his doggie. He's an author, a pilot, an astronaut, an aerospace executive. May I introduce, for induction into the National Aviation Hall of Fame, my friend, Fred Haise.
Tonight, we welcome aviator, astronaut, and aeronautical engineer Fred Haise into the National Aviation Hall of Fame.
Good evening. For the past 53 years, I've spoken at many, many events discussing Apollo 13. I'm surprised that it has remained of interest so long to both adults and children. It's really become sort of a folk tale. The years have overcome my disappointment of not getting to walk on the moon. And I really just feel really lucky to have had the opportunity for a unique test pilot's mission. Looking back over my career, my greatest contribution to aviation was as a NASA test pilot at the Flight Research Center, now Armstrong Flight Research Center, at Edwards Air Force Base. As a junior in the pilot's office, I was assigned a program in 1965 to test handling qualities of 7 general aviation aircraft. This program came about because of a request from the Civil Aeronautics Board that had noted an increase in the number of accidents over the past year. At the same time, I was looking at my boss down at the end of the row of desks, Joe Walker. A few desks more was Jack McKay, and Milt Thompson was just stepping in, all three into the X-15 program, while I was at the low and slow end of the spectrum. But in looking back at what has been done in the past, I did a little research. I discovered NASA Technical Report 755. It was authored by Robert Gilruth, covering satisfactory flight qualities of an aircraft in 1941. So that made me feel in good company. Obviously, Bob later became head of Space Task Group and director of Johnson Space Center. Our published NASA TN, the program I worked on, 3726, had recommendations of our findings and that made it into FAA Part 23, covering airworthiness standards that I feel has prevented accidents over these past 50-plus years. Nearing the end of this program, we got a call from the FAA office in Los Angeles, Tim Chisholm, and he wanted us to evaluate one aircraft for tail flutter. There had been 3 fatal accidents, and there was a visual observation on the tail coming off the aircraft on one. So we added on, and I conducted a brief flight test program resulting in the severe flutter you saw in the video. That was the tail of the aircraft flapping, sort of like bird's wings. And that was slow motion. The chase pilot and the NASA photographer were shooting at 400 frames per second. And fortunately, the tail structure did not completely fail. That test flight was conducted the day after Deke Slayton had called me and said that I had been selected, and I was to make my transfer from the NASA Flight Research Center to NASA Johnson Space Center into the astronaut office. So I could have had the dubious record of being an astronaut for one day. I have been blessed with a great career for over 48 years in aerospace. My thanks to the National Aviation Hall of Fame for this honor. It's at the top for an aviator. Thank you.
You have to geek out on the flutter video at some other point on YouTube, which I occasionally force flying students to watch. I had no idea that Fred Haise was actually flying the airplane that day. That was really incredible. Okay, next up in this incredible class of inductees, not just a pilot, but an inventor and civil rights activist. Educated at the Curtiss Wright School of Aviation, he graduated at the top of his class and later established his own school of aeronautics. His efforts to educate and train black pilots led to the integration of the American aviation industry. Please take a look at the screen.
Born in 1903 in Newport, Arkansas, Cornelius Coffey's interest in aviation began early in his life. At the age of 13, Coffey received his first airplane ride, and he was hooked. In 1925, he left home and traveled to Chicago to learn to be an auto mechanic. With aviation always on his mind, he soon partnered with John Robinson and founded the Challenger Air Pilots Association to aid their attempts to enroll in flying programs. With the programs of the time blocking African Americans' enrollment, Coffey and Robinson engaged in self-education. Building their own single-seat airplane powered by a motorcycle engine, they taught themselves to fly. Needing official recognition for a license, Coffey and Robinson filed an unlawful discrimination lawsuit to attend the Curtiss Wright School of Aeronautics. They were finally admitted, and after enrolling in the school's aviation mechanics course, both became among the school's top graduates. In 1932, Coffey became the first African American to have both a pilot's and mechanics license. 6 years later, in 1938, Coffey created the first African American-owned flight school. Located outside Chicago at Harlem Airport, Coffey recruited black pilots to serve as instructors. One instructor, National Aviation Hall of Fame enshrinee Willa Brown, became Coffey's wife. By the end of the 1930s, the Coffey School of Aeronautics helped Chicago become known as the leading city for black pilot training. 1939, with the clouds of war gathering, Coffey, Willa Brown, and Enoch Waters formed the National Airmen's Association of America. These efforts were foundational in the formation of America's first military black fighter pilots, the Tuskegee Airmen. Cornelius Coffey's goal was to teach African Americans to excel in the sky, understanding that racial prejudice would raise the bar higher for black pilots. Treated as second-class citizens, the Tuskegee Airmen were racially segregated during the war. While unconventional at the time, Cornelius Coffey supported efforts for the Tuskegee Airmen to be militarily integrated. After World War II, Coffey continued to instruct at 2 Chicago area universities. Among his honors, Coffey received the Dwight H. Green Trophy in 1941, and in 1980 was honored with a day by the city of Chicago. That same year, the FAA created what is known as the Coffey Fix, a waypoint over Lake Calumet, providing pilots an electronic course correction while inbound to Midway Airport. Cornelius Coffey's pioneering efforts led to the integration of African American pilots into the American aviation industry. He continued to fly until 1992, when he was 89 years old. He died 2 years later in Chicago, Illinois, at the age of 91. Tonight, we welcome pilot and trailblazer Cornelius Coffey to the National Aviation Hall of Fame.
Please welcome General Lloyd Fig Newton.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Indeed, it's a great honor for me to have the opportunity to present Mr. Cornelius Robinson Coffey for induction in the National Aviation Hall of Fame. I don't know of anyone that's more deserving to be in the hall than this great American. The story of Coffey is just another story of an extraordinary American who've overcome all of the odds to achieve his dream and his life's mission. There are a few key words that come to my mind when I think of Coffey, and it's things like a visionary, mission-oriented, totally dedicated, and a key passion for aviation. From that early age of 13, after he had his first flight, as you saw in the film, Coffey, I believe, conceived the vision in his mind that one day he would be a pilot, an aviator who would help to make a difference in America. And as you can imagine, for a 13-year-old African-American kid in Newport, Arkansas, this was a rather bold vision. However, this didn't deter Coffey. His mission was to learn how to fly, and he did that and a lot more. I think it's fair to say that Coffey had a real passion for flying. He had a purpose-driven life that became an exciting career. His school, as was mentioned, became a pipeline for African Americans to become pilots in World War II. And many of the famous Tuskegee Airmen went through his school first and then to Tuskegee. Even though Coffey was certified as a flight pilot and a flight instructor, he was best known for his extraordinary skills as an aircraft mechanic. As they would say, if you want it fixed, give it to Coffey. He even invented a heating system for the carburetor on the airplanes that would enable the aircraft to fly in cold weather conditions. The flying influence and handprint of Cornelius Coffey can still be seen and felt today in thousands of aviators. There are so many of us who stood and are still standing on his shoulders, such as myself, the new chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, C.Q. Brown, and many others. I'm absolutely certain that I would not be standing here in this capacity tonight if it wasn't for Cornelius Robinson Coffey. He was brave, he was courageous, he was bold, and most of all, he has a passion for this industry that we love called aviation. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my high honor to present Mr. Cornelius Robinson Coffey for induction in the Aviation Hall of Fame. Thank you.
Tonight, we welcome pilot, inventor, and civil rights activist Cornelius Coffey into the National Aviation Hall of Fame. Accepting on behalf of the late Cornelius Coffey is his grandnephew, Craig Coffey.
Good evening. First of all, I want to thank General Newton. My granduncle would be so thrilled to know that this was coming from General Newton. I really want to, on behalf of our entire family, thank everybody. We are so proud. This has been such a spectacular event, and I know he would be just humbled and honored to be a part of it. Cornelius Coffey accomplished much and impacted many, but rather than talk about all of his accomplishments, I wanted to share probably the most important story of his life that nobody ever talks about. Whenever the exploits of Cornelius Coffey are referenced, it typically begins with the phrase, "At age 13, Cornelius Coffey received his first airplane ride, and he was hooked." Few stop to consider, how does a young black kid get an airplane ride in 1916? I mean, even today, if you tried to ask a 13-year-old to go get on a plane, they'd have a hard time getting on a plane. So you can imagine a young black kid in 1916 trying to get a flight. Flight had only been invented in 1903, so it was not commonplace to have access to airplanes. Airplanes at that time were primarily used for World War I, and Cornelius came from a humble, impoverished family. So the idea of booking a flight was not an option. So, in 1916, how does a black 13-year-old Cornelius Coffey get his first flight? Here's the story. Barnstorming. In 1916, barnstorming was a form of entertainment where pilots flew into small towns to perform aerial tricks and give people short rides. Pilots did it for a few reasons: to impress people with their flying skills, to demonstrate the durability and ingenuity of planes, and of course, to make a little bit of money. A World War I veteran and barnstormer landed in Cornelius' hometown of Newport, Arkansas, which had a population of about 2,000 people. He was offering rides and aerial tricks. And as kids, Cornelius and his friends had earned and pitched in their nickels and dimes to pay for one lucky kid to get a ride with the barnstormer. They planned to draw straws to see which one of those kids would get a chance to fly. Cornelius and his friends watched the barnstormer's flights in astonishment, but also with a growing fear. With each barnstormer ride, it seemed increasingly unlucky to be the one who would get selected to fly. Despite pooling their money, friends dropped out one by one, too afraid to fly. But a curious and determined Cornelius said, "What the heck, I'll do it." The barnstormer strapped in the 13-year-old Cornelius and took flight. To the crowd's amazement, he did loops, he did dives and other tricks while giving Cornelius the ride, or perhaps scare, of his life. But rather than being scared, Cornelius was in pure joy. The pilot eventually landed and was amazed the 13-year-old Cornelius never squealed or cried during flight. The pilot said, "Hey kid, you're fearless. You should learn to fly one day." And from those humble moments, history was written. A few years later, Cornelius learned to become an auto mechanic, to then become an airplane mechanic, to then learn how to fly, to then create the first African-American-owned flight school, teaching the many who eventually became members of the Tuskegee Airmen. That would change the war, and that would change the world. He did this while facing adversity and discrimination, but he never lost sight of his joy, his passion, and his purpose. I last saw my great-uncle Cornelius in 1991 in Chicago, a couple of years before he passed. He told me the story about the barnstormer. He winked, he laughed softly and said, "My life changed because me and friends pitched in nickels and dimes." And now he's in the National Aviation Hall of Fame. I believe God orchestrates profound change in the world through seemingly small moments. In this case, the small moment were kids tossing in nickels and dimes, which led to Cornelius's adventures and accomplishments. This story was Cornelius's final lesson to me when we met that day, how little things can unlock big opportunities. Loose change, nickels and dimes, changed his life. What's the small things in each of our lives that we might be overlooking or taking for granted that could actually unlock something bigger and change the world? I want to thank again the National Aviation Hall of Fame for honoring Cornelius Coffey, the selection committee, and again, General Newton. Thank you very much.
Our next inductee became the first president of the General Aviation Manufacturers Association in 1970, and as an aviation advocate, he spearheaded industry programs to support the recruitment of pilots, championed the production of propeller-driven aircraft in a jet-dominated market, and ensured the expansion of Embry-Riddle into a larger and accredited 4-year university. Again, please turn your attention to the screen.
And I am proud to say that in aviation, we have a good, strong track record of hanging together.
Born in 1934 in Bellingham, Washington, Edward Stimpson was the oldest of 7 children. After high school, Stimpson attended Harvard College and earned a master's degree in public administration from the University of Washington. In 1962, he was selected by FAA head Najib Halabi to work as head of the Congressional Affairs for the FAA under the Kennedy administration. His aviation career took off.
I met Ed in the fall of 1970, and he was the first president of GAMA. I had the great privilege of working with Ed during 3 different decades. Could not possibly have been a more effective leader for the industry in Washington.
The General Aviation Revitalization Act reflected a lifetime of building relationships, understanding strategy, and forever changing the way piston engine aircraft are manufactured in the United States.
The idea for the legislative solution on the General Aviation Revitalization Act actually came from Ed, working with his friend and my friend Russ Meyer.
The day after Clinton signed the bill, we announced that we were going back into single engine production again, started building 172, and we thought it'd be a great idea to honor Ed, and we ended the N in Echo Sierra ES, stood for Ed Stimpson.
He also had a huge impact on generating new pilots through his leadership of the Be a Pilot program. And it's unbelievable how much he accomplished as the U.S. ambassador at the International Civil Aviation Organization. It's an amazing record.
Stimpson also served as the chairman of the Flight Safety Foundation in Washington, D.C.
Ed was chairman of the board of trustees at Embry-Riddle for quite some time and had a major impact.
Big, tall, slender guy, just honest, candid, patient, knowledgeable, all of those things that are so important on the Hill. Bob Dole called him at one point the most effective lobbyist in Washington, simply because he knew what he was talking about.
He received numerous awards for his leadership and dedication, including the Wright Brothers Memorial Trophy.
I got to see the interaction between Ed and Dottie, and that was a model for me.
He was a decent, authentic guy. What he believed in is really the future of aviation.
Congratulations, Ed, on your induction in the National Aviation Hall of Fame. Well earned, my friend. I wish you were here to accept it in person.
In 2009, Edward Stimpson passed away in his Idaho home at the age of 75. Tonight, we welcome mentor and aviation advocate Edward Stimpson into the National Aviation Hall of Fame.
Please welcome President and CEO of the National Business Aviation Association, Ed Boland.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You know, nearly 50 years ago, Ed Stimpson came to Washington, D.C. to serve in the Kennedy administration. And until he passed in 2009, every year, every way, he impacted every aspect of aviation. As you saw in the video, Ed served in the Kennedy administration and then founded the General Aviation Manufacturers Association. He would not just create it, but he would lead it to become one of the most significant aviation associations in the world. He also chaired the preeminent safety foundation, the Flight Safety Foundation. He was on the board of trustees and served as the chair of the preeminent Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. Ed Stimpson was tapped by not one, but 2 US presidents to be our nation's representative to ICAO, serving at the rank of ambassador. Ed Stimpson had a profound impact on all of the most important and enduring aviation policies from 1962 through his passing in 2009. His impact can be felt by the fact that his jobs and operations were created as a result of his advocacy. Ed Stimpson enabled jobs and he enabled operations. He enriched aviation education. He expanded aviation manufacturing, and he enhanced aviation safety. Now tonight, people have come from around the world and across multiple generations to be here to pay tribute to Ed Stimpson. Among those in the audience tonight are people who have known and worked with Ed and have their lives changed by him. Now, there's far too many people to recognize, but there are a few who are emblematic of his amazing life. Ed Stimpson came, as you heard, to work at the FAA, and for years he worked with every FAA administrator with a close personal relationship. And I'm pleased that tonight, former FAA Administrator Marion Blakey is with us. She served as FAA Administrator when Ed represented our country at ICAO. Ed Stimpson, as I said, created a lot of jobs and was tireless in promoting safety. So it's entirely appropriate that we have with us tonight John Golia, the voice of aviation labor on Capitol Hill and a person who served as the first certified A&P on the National Transportation Safety Board. Ed represented our nation incredibly well at ICAO, so it's only appropriate that his successor at ICAO, Ambassador Don Bliss, is with us tonight. We also have generations of people who worked at GAMA, including the legendary aviation lawyer Stan Green, who with Ed opened the doors at GAMA, and the current president and chairman of the board of GAMA, Pete Bunce. And of course, we have decades of chairmen of that remarkable association. Many of them are seated at various tables, but it's only appropriate that we recognize Russ Meyer, who served as chairman of GAMA on 3 separate occasions and is himself a member of the National Aviation Hall of Fame. Ed Stimpson didn't just change policies, he changed people. A lot of people who are here tonight have been touched by Ed Stimpson and have had their destiny shaped by that encounter. I'm proud to be one of those people, and it is my honor to present Ed Stimpson for enshrinement in the National Aviation Hall of Fame.
Tonight, we welcome Aviation Administrator and Industry Advocate Edward Stimpson into the National Aviation Hall of Fame. Accepting on his behalf are his sister Kathryn and brother John Stimpson.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Thank you, Ed. And thank you on behalf of Ed's family for his friends and his colleagues and the people that he loved and admired and talked to us about working with. Now, I know that Russ Meyer is out there. Russ, even before I met you, your name was praised in our household. On behalf of Ed's family, we accept the honor that the National Aviation Hall of Fame has bestowed upon him. And if Ed could only be with us, if he hadn't died prematurely, he would be surprised, humbled, and as grateful as we are. And if Dottie, his wife, could only be with us, she would be as happy for him as we are. Our brother Ed, your friend Ed, your colleague Ed, loved aviation. He loved aviation and aerospace from a grass runway on an island in Puget Sound to the airports that are our modern cities and that one of his fellow enshrinees did so much to modernize. And that passion for aviation began when he was a small boy. And I think what was really formative was during World War II. Our father was a medical officer in the Army Air Forces. He was stationed abroad in England and in secret bases in Russia and the Middle East. And every Sunday night, 52 Sundays a year, our mother would gather her children, then only 5 of us, around the upright piano. There would be a framed photo of Daddy on the top of the piano to oversee us. Ed would put down his model airplane. Our mother would begin to play, and we would all sing with all the gusto we could muster. And of course we sang the Air Force hymn, "Off We Go into the Wild Blue Yonder." We sang to end the war. We sang to bring our father home. And even decades later, when we were together, we could sing "Off We Go" for nearly every line. Now, such experiences during World War II interwove the Ed that you know, the Ed who loved his family, who loved his country, and who loved aviation. As a boy, I would suggest to you, as a boy, he realized that aviation was neither a careless joyride nor a selfish source of profit. Aviation and aviators and the people in this room had obligations and provided invaluable services. They were crucial for a nation's survival. And because aviation was so important, Ed wanted it to be level and true. You have heard earlier that his reputation was honest Ed. But we were talking at my table that he, in the family, had another reputation. He was the nastiest, most elbowy basketball player you can imagine. And those of you who had the obscure pleasure of playing basketball with my brother, as I did, and as my brother John did, know that honest Ed would do anything to get those 2 points. He wanted aviation, and he knew it to be a principled source of innovation, a principled source of prosperity, a principled source of diplomacy, and a principled source of fair partnerships between public and private actors. And he spoke highly, as I just told you, reminded you, Russ Meyer, he spoke highly of the character of the men and women with whom he worked. He was a tireless, as you know, a tireless advocate for aviation and aerospace. He wanted people to fly. He wanted people to enjoy and learn about it. He told us the minute he got his own pilot's license. And he wanted people to be general aviation pilots if they could. And notably, he wanted aviation to be a safe and responsible place for people. Let me tell you a second story. I was with him in a puddle jumper, flying from Bellingham, our birthplace, to a Puget Sound island for a family event. I think it would be unfair of me in this room to say who the manufacturer of this puddle jumper was, but it was one of you. Ed and I were in the front seats, and looking over at Ed, I saw him frown, and I heard him murmur, "That's not so good." Then he leaned forward as far as his seatbelt allowed and spoke as softly as he could to the young pilot. Now, my brother was a discreet man, so he was reluctant to tell me what he had said, but I finally wormed it out of him. And he said, quote, and he was very serious. He said, that young guy was compromising safety. He was listening to music on his headphones, not leaving them open for air traffic info. And then Ed added, I don't think he will do that again. Now, most appropriately, the National Aviation Hall of Fame offers superb educational programs. Ed, those of you who worked with him at Embry-Riddle know, was a devoted educator. How could he not have been an educator when he had 5 little sisters, younger sisters, and 1 little brother to bring up? We're all, the family, are the acceptors of this enshrinement of our brother. And we are glad that the Hall of Fame will enable people to learn more about Ed. And if you learn about Ed, you will be able to hear the music of the wild blue yonder. You will be able to wonder at the vastness of space. And then we all hope that people will ask how they can participate in the adventures of aviation. And what advice do we think Ed would give them? I hope you will all agree with me. I think Ed would say, work hard, be attentive to others, be alive and alert, love what you do, and be sure that you keep your courage and your honor at the ready. Our unshakable thanks to the people who made Ed's nomination for enshrinement possible. Our unshakable thanks to the National Aviation Hall of Fame for awarding your friend, your colleague, our brother, whom we all so justly admired. Thank you for awarding him a place in your pantheon. Thank you.
Okay, our last inductee is not only the first woman to walk in space, but also the first woman to reach Challenger Deep, the deepest point on Earth. She has crewed several missions in space. She was appointed as chief scientist for NOAA and became the CEO of the Center of Science and Industry in Columbus, Ohio. Please direct your attention to the screen.
Born in Paterson, New Jersey in 1951, Kathryn Sullivan sought out a life less ordinary. After moving to Southern California when Sullivan was 7, she went on to graduate high school, having learned both French and German, with an eye to learning Russian. While at the University of California, Santa Cruz, Sullivan began looking at a life in the earth sciences. After being an exchange student in Norway for over a year, Sullivan decided to become an oceanographer. However, fate had different plans. After prompting from her brother, Sullivan applied to NASA for the first class to allow women as astronauts. She put an ocean exploration fellowship on hold when she was invited to the Johnson Space Center for a round of tests and interviews. Kathryn Sullivan traded oceanic research ships for space shuttles when NASA accepted her in the first class of Space Shuttle astronauts. In July 1983, Kathryn Sullivan earned her gold astronaut wings as she rode Space Shuttle Challenger to orbit on STS-41G. During the mission, Sullivan became the first American woman to perform a spacewalk. Along with David Leestma, Sullivan helped demonstrate that satellites could be refueled in space. Sullivan was then assigned to mission STS-61J, the mission to deploy the Hubble Space Telescope. Months before their planned liftoff, the whole shuttle program was put on hold due to the Challenger disaster. Shuttle operations began again just over 2 years later, with a better agency and better shuttle systems. Sullivan and the Hubble telescope team used this extra time to design and test every tool needed to repair and maintain Hubble throughout its working life. Finally, in April 1990, Sullivan and her crew launched into space aboard the orbiter Discovery, with the Hubble telescope nestled in her cargo bay. During the mission, Sullivan supported the deployment of the telescope and performed an array of scientific experiments. In 1992, Sullivan rocketed into space again aboard Atlantis on STS-45. The 9-day mission was designed to study planet Earth with a host of experiments, both in the cabin and the cargo bay. With over 532 hours in space on 3 different spacecraft, Kathryn Sullivan left NASA in 1992 for a presidential appointment at NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. In 1996, Kathryn Sullivan became the president and CEO of one of the nation's leading hands-on science museums, COSI, the Center of Science and Industry in Columbus. After a decade in this role, she returned again to national service. In 2011, she was appointed by President Obama as Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Environmental Observation and Prediction and Deputy Administrator for NOAA. In 2013, she moved up to the position of Undersecretary of Commerce for Oceans and Atmosphere and NOAA Administrator. Since finishing her time at NOAA, Sullivan has busied herself with positions at the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum and the Potomac Institute for Policy Studies. A dive to the Challenger deep in the Marianas Trench in 2020 made her the most vertical person in the world, the first person to both fly in space and dive to the ocean's deepest point. In recognition of her remarkable achievements, Sullivan has received numerous honors and awards throughout her career. Her contributions to oceanography, space exploration, national policy, and public outreach have solidified her status as a pioneer and role model. We are honored to welcome astronaut and scientist Kathryn Sullivan to the National Aviation Hall of Fame.
Please welcome Class of 2017 Enshrinee, Charlie Bolden.
First of all, I'm giddy for 2 reasons. I'm having an opportunity to introduce my 2-time crewmate, Kathy Sullivan, but I had an opportunity to meet the star of the evening, Derek Farrell. 17-year-old, who is the only introducer to follow the rules tonight, to keep it brief. That's a warning. I will not keep it brief. You know, I'm giddy for the second reason, because at 5:24 this evening, my wife Jackie, sitting over there, and I became the grandparents of our second grandson. Lennox Charles Bolden, so we're giddy. Just 27 years from her birth into a middle-class aerospace family in Paterson, New Jersey, as you've heard, Dr. Kathryn Sullivan would realize the dream of countless little girls. Her passion was for the ocean, still to this day our least explored frontier. But with encouragement from her older brother Grant, who had himself already applied to NASA for both the pilot and mission specialist positions in the astronaut program, she decided, what the heck? She would respond to NASA's appeal to women and minorities to apply. On January 16, 1978, she was selected as one of the first 6 women to join NASA's astronaut office at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. In the 1978 astronaut group of 35 new guys, the TFNG, that's the story they tell about the acronym. Kathy immediately began to make her mark in the astronaut office and was selected to fly as a crew member of the STS-41G mission from October 5th to 13th, 1984, during which, on October 11th, 1984, as you've heard, she became the first American woman to perform a spacewalk. Kathy and I became instant friends as we became teammates on the astronaut office softball team and fierce competitors on the squash and racquetball courts, where she frequently became the victor and I the vanquished. From April 24th to 29th, 1980, we were crewmates on the shuttle for Hubble Space Telescope deploy, STS-31. Kathy and the late Bruce McCandless were our 2 EVA, or spacewalk crew members, who trained to perform any contingency spacewalk that may have become necessary over the course of our mission. They were also among the most knowledgeable people on the planet about the intricacies of Hubble, having been involved in its development and being the leaders in designing and testing specialized tools for any anticipated Hubble maintenance or repair activities. During our training, our final integrated sim, this is where you bring people from all over the world together in a simulation, our final integrated sim for the mission dealt with solving a jammed solar array during deploy. Kathy, Bruce, and I left the shuttle mission simulator and went over to the Weightless Environment Training Facility, or the WETF as we used to call it, a giant pool in which a full-scale mock-up of Hubble was immersed to allow them to conduct lifelike simulations of repairs. Our entire crew had traveled to Bristol, England earlier in our training to visit the British Aerospace Production Facility for HST solar arrays, where we learned how to manually deploy the solar arrays if we experienced any difficulty with getting them to fully deploy. On deploy day, with everything scheduled to go pretty well, our actual flight, Kathy and Bruce, both of whom were meticulous planners, they decided that they would dress in their liquid-cool ventilating garments, or LCVGs, after crew wake-up, just to get a portion of the pre-EVA preparation out of the way in case an emergency arose. And they needed to do an EVA. They had already done all the suit checkouts the night before, so they were well ahead in the EVA timeline should one become necessary, and nobody ever expected that to happen. As fate would have it, the first solar array went out without a hitch, but the second stopped traveling a few seconds and a few feet from its stowed position. After hours, literally hours of troubleshooting at the Goddard Space Flight Center in Greenbelt, Maryland, the Johnson Space Center in Houston, British Aerospace over in Bristol, and other locations, the decision was finally made to put Bruce and Kathy in the shuttle airlock, depressed in their EVA suits, and depressurized in case an EVA to perform a manual deploy became necessary. As we had trained, I went into the airlock with Bruce and Kathy and helped them don their spacesuits. Once I had checked and double-checked all the connections in each suit, I moved out of the airlock, closed the hatch, and instructed Bruce and Kathy to initiate depressurization procedure that would evacuate all the air from the airlock until it was a vacuum, just like space outside. At that point, I got a pit in my stomach and a pang of fear as it dawned on me that I had just locked two of my close friends and crewmates into this little chamber from which they would emerge into space, and their lives depended on my having ensured all their suit connections and pressure fittings were properly configured and secure. As the airlock reached 5 pounds per square inch PSI, almost the vacuum of space, we received an urgent call from Mission Control in Houston telling us, stop! Stop the depress! Where we were, and to immediately maneuver the shuttle into the appropriate position to release Hubble. They had determined that our problem was not with hardware, but with a software module in the telescope, that the ground would no-op, that is, change a 1 to a 0, and have us resend the deploy command to see if the solar array would fully deploy. As directed, I left the middeck to take my place on the flight deck to back up our commander, Lauren Shriver, and our MS-2, or flight engineer, Steve Hawley, and the RMS remote manipulator system operator in maneuvering the shuttle Discovery to our deploy position to release HST. This left Bruce and Kathy locked in the airlock with no way to view the historic deploy for which they had planned and trained for much of their astronaut careers. The software change was made. We resent the deploy signal. The solar array deployed as planned, and Steve finally released Hubble in the picture that you saw earlier on command from Mission Control. Watching Hubble drift gently away from Discovery as we maneuvered for separation was breathtaking, with the continent of South America quickly going below us, and the two people on board who had worked their hearts out for this moment were locked in the airlock, unable to see anything. In time, I think Kathy has forgiven me, and she even flew once more with me on STS-45 when she served as our payload commander, overseeing all our science experiments on the Atlas I Atmospheric Laboratory for Applications in Science mission, NASA's first mission to planet Earth. She was superb, as expected, in planning, coordinating all our science activities, and overseeing the conduct of in-flight activities. She was the consummate leader. In 2020, Kathy would become the first and only human being to walk in space and dive to Challenger Deep in the Marianas Trench, 7 miles, 35,853, think about this, 35,853 feet below the surface. Named to Time Magazine's 100 list of the world's most influential people in 2014, the late Senator John Glenn wrote of Kathy, and I quote, "Kathy is not just an ivory tower scientist. She was part of NASA's first class of female astronauts and went on to fly 3 shuttle missions. She is the first American woman to walk in space and served aboard the mission that deployed the Hubble Space Telescope. That role in helping humanity look outward has not prevented her from looking inward. The planet is suffering increasingly severe upheavals, at least partly due to climate change, droughts, floods, typhoons, tornadoes. I believe my good friend Kathy is the right person for the right job at the right time. I am extremely honored to be a part of this perfect time to welcome my friend and my crewmate, Dr. Kathy D. Sullivan, into the National Aviation Hall of Fame.
Tonight, We welcome astronaut, scientist, and educator, Kathryn Sullivan, into the National Aviation Hall of Fame.
Well, thank you, Charlie, for that great introduction and for being such a great mentor and friend and commander. And I want to start right away by thanking the Board of Trustees and the Selection Committee for the National Aviation Hall of Fame for bestowing this really delightful honor on me. It's been said already from this stage, and it's true. This is the top of the top in aviation and aerospace. My very first aviation memory, however, is a little more modest. It's of smiley faces. Our family was at a little general aviation airport in northern New Jersey so that my flying crazy older brother could see real airplanes. From my 4-year-old vantage point, all of the air intakes, which were right about at eye height, they just looked like goofy little smiles. A few years later, I had a more substantial contact with aviation when my elementary school closed down to allow the expansion of Van Nuys Airport. Now, I'd only been at that elementary school for 5 or 6 weeks, starting when my family arrived in California from New Jersey, so I didn't really know any of my classmates or schoolmates. And you can then imagine my shock when I met one of them again 20 years later, as we both joined NASA in the astronaut class of 1978. You see, Sally Ride was also a first grader at Havenhurst Elementary that year, and that became our benchmark for confirming we were in the same class. And interestingly, when Sally was inducted into the Hall of Fame in, I think, 2004, I attended her enshrinement ceremony in Dayton, and her remarks also mentioned that year as a first notable benchmark in her aviation career. Flying later became a more central element in our family's life in my early teens when my father joined his company's flying club. He had 2 aims. I think the big one was to get to better fishing grounds in the Sierra Nevada mountains faster than you could do in a car. But there was also the one about feeding my brother's continuing passion for aviation and vision of becoming a pilot. Now, I was not nearly as fanatic about aviation as my brother, but I sure was not going to give up any of my share of time with Dad. So I, too, became his unofficial student pilot on weekend proficiency flights, as well as flight planner, load master, and autopilot on our family vacations. And flying in Southern California on the weekends back then was a delight. The little old strip of Agua Dulce, north of the San Fernando Valley, that was our favorite stop for $200 hamburgers. And Santa Paula, a little to the west of us, and a real hotbed of aerobatic aviation, was our favorite for apple pie. Santa Paula had another edge on Agua Dulce, though. It had Airline Alley, a row of hangars facing each other where airline pilots spent their off days loving on their antique and experimental planes. And let me tell you, no stop at Santa Paula was complete without a out and back down Airline Alley. But my best memory of Santa Paula is that's where I got my first really wildly cool small airplane flight. It was aboard a craft called a breezy, which I suspect many in this room know. But for those of you who don't, I want you to imagine the tubular metal structure of a fuselage that's usually covered with fabric and painted in wonderful colors. Except with the breezy, it wasn't. It was just bare open metal tubing, on the top of which was a pusher engine, fabric-covered wings, fabric-covered tail surfaces. You kind of have to cover those or it's not going to fly. And the 2 seats were right up at the nose, with the passenger seat so far forward your feet were basically straddling the nose gear, and riding that airplane was clearly going to be like a magic carpet ride surrounded by absolutely nothing but air. So we're standing around gawking at this
spectacular, weird airplane, and I hear the owner say to the friend who was with him, come on, let me take you up for a ride. And the friend dissembled, said, no, I really couldn't. And before I even quite knew what I was doing, I said, boy, I sure could. And before my dad knew what was going on, he realized his 12-year-old daughter was climbing into the sky aboard an oddball plane with an unknown pilot headed to he had no idea where. Happily, all went well, and he did not have to explain to my mother how he let that happen. But despite these and many, many other wonderful childhood memories, I was never aiming for a career in aviation. Truth be told, I never had any explicit job or career path in mind. I just knew, and I knew this very clearly, that I wanted my life to be as inquisitive and as adventurous as the lives of the explorers and aquanauts and astronauts that I had admired for so long. In college, this led me, as you heard, out to sea as an oceanographer. And I have no doubt that it was my experience in planning and executing expeditions far out at sea that got me across the goal line and into the astronaut corps. I felt honored beyond words in 1978 to join the company of the astronauts I had admired for so many years. And I have that same feeling times 100 here tonight as I think about joining the ranks of the Hall's enshrinees, men and women who pioneered aviation and spaceflight, who launched our nation's aerospace enterprise, who broke countless physical and social barriers, and literally reached for the stars. So I thank you again, Hall of Fame, and all the enshrinees for welcoming me into this delightful company. It took more than a village for this little girl to go from suburban California to outer space at a time when there were no female role models to study. If I can see it, I can be it didn't work for girls like me back then. So I went with, if you can dream it, you can do it. And I was blessed to have parents and teachers and mentors and friends who fed my dreams and helped me make them real. I'm delighted that some of them are here with me tonight, and I thank all of them for urging me on and helping me out along the way. The opportunity to inspire young people to dream their big dreams and tackle the challenge of fulfilling them is the greatest gift that my career has given me. And I pledge to the Hall of Fame tonight that I will channel this honor into further efforts to inspire the rising young talents who will power the next era in aerospace and take us all to even greater new heights. Thank you very much.
Okay, unscripted time. I would like to invite, before we say goodnight, the chair of the board, Jim Cooling, back to the podium for a special presentation.
Thank you. This is just a 2-minute warning. We have a little surprise in the program here, but Mark Armstrong is going to be up here in just a few minutes, so don't go anywhere. Amy, if you would mind coming up to the program, up to the podium. Our CEO, Amy Mariyama. Oh, here we go. She did all the scripts and everything for the show, but she doesn't know about this. Okay. Amy, on behalf of the Board of Trustees of the National Aviation Hall of Fame, we want to thank you, for everything you've done to make this a beautiful evening. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for being here tonight. Hope you've enjoyed the remarkable stories that make these men and women deserving of a place in the National Aviation Hall of Fame. We also hope that you join us next fall as we celebrate the 60th Annual Enshrinement Dinner and Ceremony. Our program would not be complete without the reciting of John Gillespie McGee Jr.'s High Flight. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the son of 1979 enshrinee Neil Armstrong, Mr. Mark Armstrong.
Oh, I have slipped the surly bonds of earth and danced the skies on laughter-silvered wings. Sunward I've climbed and joined the tumbling mirth of sun-split clouds and done 100 things you have not dreamed of. Wheeled and soared and swung high in the sunlit silence. Hovering there, I've chased the shouting winds along and flung my eager craft through footless halls of air. Up the long, delirious, burning blue, I've topped the windswept heights with easy grace, where never lark or even eagle flew. And while with silent, lifting mind I've trod the high, untrespassed sanctity of space, put out my hand and touched the face of God. Thank you. I'd like to welcome back to the stage the 2023 inductees of the National Aviation Hall of Fame.
Please join me in one final congratulations of the National Aviation Hall of Fame Enshrinement Class of 2023. Velta Benn, Cornelius Coffey, Angela Gittens, Fred Haise, Edward Stimpson, and Kathryn Sullivan. Congratulations once again to the National Aviation Hall of Fame Class of 2023. Thank you and good night.